Last year, we test drove the Volvo V60 and since then, it has become one of the favorites amongst consumers in the luxury midsize crossover SUV category, all in part due to its clean and contemporary Scandinavian design, exceptional build quality, and an overall rock-solid road driving experience. The latter is no surprise. After all, Volvo's marketing slogan hasn't changed much over the years in convincing you that they build the world's safest automobiles. But what has changed is Volvo's initiative to go green, and this week we have a very special variant of the Volvo V60. It's the Recharge model, and it is a plug-in hybrid. Not only are you going to get excellent fuel economy, but 35 miles of EV range and a mind-boggling 455 horsepower thanks to its high flux density dual electric motor setup. Now, of course, the midsize crossover SUV segment is the most popular out there, and as a result, the Volvo V60 faces very stiff competition. There are certainly some very positive aspects that really makes the Volvo V60 stand out from the crowd, but there are also some really weird engineering design features and quirks that I personally dislike. There are also some concerns on the consumer perspective, which you should really know about before buying one. We'll go over a lot more detail in a bit, but for now, let's go over some of the specs, trims, and pricing, and how the Volvo V60 stacks up against some of its competitors in the market today. The XC60 comes in 3 trims with a base Recharge priced in at $58,295 and our ultimate trim under test at $68,045. Yes, that's quite a big price gap, but you do get quite a bit of added luxury treatment, including 20-inch alloy wheels, a premium Bauer & Wilkins audio sound system, heated and ventilated front seats, graphical heads-up display, and a unique crystal gear selector knob by Aurifers. The engine is a 2.0-liter plug-in hybrid that gets about 36 miles of EV range. Gear management is done by an 8-speed automatic transmission with an all-wheel drive powertrain setup using dual electric motors on a 48-volt mild hybrid system. Now, where the XC60 really stands out is the power output and fuel economy. It produces a mind-boggling 455 horsepower with exceptional fuel economy of 63 miles per gallon equivalent. The Volvo V60 is all about quality and aesthetics, and when you're up close, it's hard to ignore just how thick, rich, and creamy this paint quality is. Speaking of which, Volvo has an excellent color palette for you to choose from, and which my favorite happens to be the Fjord Blue on the Volvo XC40 that I test drove a few months ago. Now, the doors is where the first impression lies, and the keyless entry system literally sounds and feels like a gun cocking mechanism. And the overall feels of the door and the latching mechanism feels ultra rock solid, which is a typical trait of European engineering. Now let's move on to these 20-inch wheel rims here. I mean, afar, they certainly look really nice, but up close, you can certainly feel just how smooth the finishing is, which kind of showcases the amazing quality of the aluminum machining process. And one of my favorite design features are these LED headlamps. They're unique in the sense that it follows the contours of these wheel wells and on the front hood that kind of gives it a very unique, organic, and dynamic look. Also following in the back, you've also got these landscape style taillights, which again looks really nice. On the side, again, you've got some really simple contours, and the side mirrors are also blacked out to kind of give the V60 a bit of a pop, but all without overdoing it too much. Underneath this hood is Volvo's in-house T8 powertrain, and it's probably one of the most sophisticated powertrains out there. It's an inline 4-cylinder engine that's turbocharged, supercharged, with an 18.8 kilowatt lithium-ion battery pack, with dual electric motors and an 8-speed automatic transmission. That practically exhausts every possible combination of components you can fit underneath this engine bay, which probably explains why this hood is so massive. Nevertheless, the performance metrics are amazing. This pushes out a whopping 455 horsepower and 523 pound-feet of torque. To put that into perspective, you typically don't even see these numbers at these levels, even in high-performance sports cars, yet it exists in this practical mid-size crossover SUV. Another thing to note is that you're only able to use around 80% of the battery pack for pure EV driving, which will yield around 35 miles. Thereafter, it'll automatically transition into hybrid mode, which you'll get around 25 miles per gallon of fuel economy. Nevertheless, this comes standard in all-wheel drive, so you're going to get really good traction stability, especially in slippery and wet conditions. Now, part of our upgrade with the Volvo V60 here is it's got air suspensions that can automatically be raised or lowered. So for example, if you're accelerating really hard and taking advantage of that full 455 horsepower, it'll automatically lower it to give you a lower center of gravity and more road control. Likewise, in the back, you can also raise and lower the vehicle to make cargo loading and unloading a little bit easier for you. Now, unfortunately, the onboard charger is a smaller 3 kilowatt charger, so charge time is going to take longer than around 6 to 7 hours. I really wish Volvo fitted a larger 6 kilowatt charger to reduce the overall charge time. Now, the interior of the Volvo V60 really showcases the quality of craftsmanship it has to offer. Take, for example, this thick grip steering wheel and these front panels here that all look and feel very, very dense and solid to the touch. And one of my favorite features of this interior are these seats. I mean, yes, they look very dense and there actually isn't a whole lot of padding, but at the same time, it offers a lot of support, especially with these leg extenders that add a tremendous amount of comfort even on the long haul. You've also got this beautiful wood panel as well as this trim here that runs across the front panel and on the center console with these sliding doors that exposes additional storage. In the middle, you've got an rotary style ignition switch as well as a crystal glass shift knob, which again looks and feels really amazing when you're using it. Now, simplicity is key here. For example, there are literally no letters or labels anywhere to be found on the buttons on the steering wheel and on the center console button display here. That kind of follows the simplicity of the Scandinavian design approach, which is really nice. Upgraded on our interior also these Bauer & Wilkins sound system, and if you're not aware, Bauer & Wilkins manufactures very high fidelity audio sound equipment, so that really adds a nice touch to the overall interior with added sound quality, especially with this integrated tweeter speaker here in the middle, which adds a very unique styling feature. Now let's talk about the electronics a bit. In the center console or instrument cluster, you've got an all-digital display with the left showing your speedometer, and on the right, you've got a power meter and a gear selector. Down below, you've got all your basic necessities such as your EV range and fuel economy, and dead smack in the middle, you've got Google Maps software display. So it's really nice in the sense that it's kept very simple. I'm not visually overwhelmed, but at the same time, it shows me all the information I really need to know, which is great. Now, one of the biggest perks with this infotainment system is got Google Android built right into the system. I mean, yes, you could use Android Auto or Apple CarPlay, but just having Android Auto baked right into the system adds a lot of convenience. For example, I could use Google Voice to turn on the seat heaters, or I can use Google Voice to change the Spotify channel, for example. And also, one of the biggest perks is got one of the best navigation software you can possibly get in any car. I'm talking about Google Maps, and it just blows any other navigation software out of the water in any other competitors out there. So having Google Android built right into the infotainment system adds a lot of value and a lot of convenience. Despite how good the overall quality and craftsmanship of the overall interior is, there are certain things I personally dislike. For one, there is an absence of a climate control dedicated stack in the middle. So if I have to do any climate controls, I have to do one of two ways. I have to navigate into a dedicated menu in the infotainment system to change any temperature settings, or I can use Google Voice. I'm not really a fan of either because it does add a little bit of inconvenience and it's a little bit slow at times. And for example, it's just not as tactile as using dedicated buttons, but at least there's dedicated buttons for your front and rear window defrosters. The second gripe I have is the center console. I mean, yes, there are two cup holders as well as some additional compartments, but it's really not a lot of space available. And in modern cars, to typically cut out the center console here to create additional storage, and they also look pretty cool as well, but that's unfortunately not the case with the Volvo V60. And the third gripe I have is, I mean, yes, this quality and craftsmanship is there, but there's nothing really in the interior that immediately wows me. For example, in the Genesis GV70, it wows you with a lot of exceptional and unique design features, but the overall interior, I would say, does look a little bit bland, but there are certain features, for example, these really cool seats and some of these laminated wood grain panels that, kind of makes the overall entire interior still competitive in the market it's in. Now in the back, you've also got 60/40 rear folding seats, and it actually has quite a bit of leg room as well. And you've also got a really nice panoramic sunroof, which floods the overall cabin space with a lot of natural sunlight, which is really nice. Alright, so what's my final take of the Volvo XC60 Recharge? Let's start off with styling. I mean, yes, there are certainly some very distinctive features that I personally like, such as these LED headlamps at these high quality aluminum finished wheels, and the overall car just felt rock solid. So I'm going to rate the overall styling a 4.5 out of 5. Moving on to the interior, I mean, yes, it didn't quite have a big of a wow factor, but the quality of construction was certainly there, and I really liked the quality and styling and comfort of the seats. So I'm going to rate the overall interior a 4 out of 5. Moving on to electronics, I really liked the all-digital instrument cluster in terms of simplicity, and the Google Android software built right into the infotainment system adds a lot of convenience and value. However, the UI UX did feel very bland on the infotainment system, so I'm going to rate the overall electronics a 4 out of 5. Moving on to the powertrain, this is where it becomes a little bit controversial. I feel that the XC60 Recharge tries to achieve too much in terms of both comfort and fuel economy, and it's kind of confusing in terms of which customer base the Volvo XC60 Recharge is trying to target. Nevertheless, I'm an engineer myself. I can certainly appreciate innovation and technology. So I'm going to rate the overall powertrain a 4 out of 5. Moving on to the road test, road comfort was a little bit lacking, all in part really due to the air suspensions. I really feel that Volvo should have used adaptive damping suspensions instead. Nevertheless, I don't think the air suspensions would be a worthwhile upgrade. However, you do get 35 miles of EV range, and the overall performance acceleration is absolutely incredible. So I'm still going to rate the overall road test experience a 4 out of 5. Well, that's my final take on the Volvo XC60 Recharge. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below and I'll try my best to answer them as best as I can. And if you like this review, please don't forget to like and subscribe. And as always, keep driving, and until next time.